Hi, my name is Josh Spector. I'm one of the founders here at Product Manager HQ. I'm also the head of product and founder for a software company called Squibbler. And today I'm going to share with you 20 must-know product owner interview questions and answers that recruiters ask to gauge how capable a candidate is for the position. If you're watching this video and you're in search of a job as a product owner, then this is perfect for you, as knowing how to answer key product owner questions will help you to prepare for your interview and hopefully give you a leg up over other candidates. But first, don't forget to hit that subscribe button to get direct notifications whenever we post new and insightful videos just like this one. That way you'll always be guaranteed to get your fair share of high quality instructional content from real product management experts. Before we get into the actual questions and answers, we need to talk about how product owner interviews should be structured. Most times when interviews are conducted, whether it's for a product owner, project manager, bank teller, or really any position in general, recruiters put together a number of questions that they think are the most ideal to determine how good a candidate is for the advertised job. Usually, to help with question brainstorming, recruiters reflect on the kinds of tasks that they expect the candidate to fulfill and then generate questions to suit that. Product owner interviews should follow a similar format. That way you ensure that you have all the bases covered. After all, product owners assume multidimensional roles within the companies they work for. The responsibilities they carry out force them to interact with multiple groups, including teams, departments, and even customers themselves. The only way to truly ensure that you touch on all the important questions that you need to ask is if you group your questions into segments, which is precisely what we've done in this video. The product owner questions and answers we'll be presenting are divided into 6 segments: the product owner role, engagement with external stakeholders, interaction with internal stakeholders, product roadmap planning, user stories, product backlog, and sprint planning implementation, respectively. Let's start off with the questions in the segment for product owner role. These are meant to get a grasp of how well the candidate understands the job responsibilities of a product owner. The first question in this segment is straightforward and simple. What do you expect from this job as a product owner? The question is supposed to be an opening question that lets the candidate provide an overview of their exposure. It would tell you how prepared the candidate is for the interview and how much of an expert they are in their field. Each answer to this question will be different depending on the industry, company, and products. However, there are some commonalities you should look for. A few keywords you should be looking for include sprint planning, sprint retrospective, grooming, and sprint review. If the candidate mentions these activities, you know that they have the relevant knowledge and experience. After we've broken the ice with the first question, from the second question onward, we start to dive more into the knowledge that candidates have of the product owner role. The second question tests just that. Ask candidates the following. Do you think it's a good idea to have one person performing both the Scrum product owner role and the Scrum master role? Now, generally speaking, unless the candidate has some brilliant way to justify or explain otherwise, the answer to this question is no. Scrum masters and product owners have different responsibilities, and mixing them will always have a negative impact on the development process. The Scrum master acts as a mediator between the product owner and the development team. Therefore, if the same person plays both roles, a conflict of interest would arise. We move on to the third question within the product owner role. Do you have experience working with a Scrum framework? This question is essential since every product owner needs to have a basic understanding of the Scrum framework. The answer to this question will give you an idea of how well the candidate understands the framework. Their knowledge of the framework can be a baseline on what you can expect from the candidate. Answering the question would be different for every product owner, but a few elements should remain the same. Ideally, the candidate should define Scrum and share as much of their knowledge about the framework as possible. For example, their answer should include a statement along the lines of, Scrum is an incremental way of providing value to the end user in a timely manner. Then they can get into the origin of the framework and discuss the 3 fundamental roles that come along with it, namely the product owner, the Scrum team, and the Scrum master. The fourth and final question within the product owner role segment is another open-ended question. What other product discovery frameworks have you worked with? Yes, it's true that Scrum is the most widely used agile software development framework. However, that doesn't mean it's always the best model for every situation. Once again, the answers provided will vary. There's nothing wrong with a candidate who's familiar with the Agile framework. However, more often than not, more experienced candidates will have experience with Kanban or Waterfall. While knowing multiple frameworks may not be a specific requirement for your project, the added knowledge will help your candidate make a judgment of the best approach to take throughout the various stages of product development. Now that we've completed the questions for the product owner role segment, let us now move on to the second segment, engagement with external stakeholders. The questions here help to hire managers and understand the level of experience that candidates have in conducting customer interviews and getting feedback from users. The first question in this segment, and fifth overall, is who do you consider to be the most important PSH? This question is really important. One of the most important things to establish in an interview is whether the product owner understands whom they're targeting because their job requires them to understand the external stakeholders and develop the product accordingly. In responding, one of the first things that a candidate should do is to list out all the stakeholders in the product development process. While these will vary from project to project, generally speaking, the most common ones are customers, regulators, professionals, sponsors, and key decision makers. Once they've done so, the answer to the question should be that all stakeholders hold equal importance. The potential product owner must understand that each stakeholder plays a key role in the process and why each of those stakeholders is important to interact with. Furthermore, it's a plus point if they can explain how each stakeholder contributes to the process. The second and final question within the engagement with external stakeholders segment is a very direct one. How much time do you give to understanding customer needs and user research during product discovery? This question will force candidates to dive into their own approach to product ownership and management. Their way of doing things and their rationalization tells you how well they understand the entire process. The answer to the question tends to be different depending on the company or product. Typically, if someone says they dedicate 50% of their time to user research, that's a positive sign. However, if they say that they spend 20% or less time, they're not doing enough. They might be ignoring customer feedback and market conditions and are probably not the best product owner for the job. We now move on to the third segment, interaction with external stakeholders. As you know, working with different internal stakeholders is also a big piece of the product owner role. The following questions give recruiters an idea of the level of familiarity that candidates have in this area. The first question within this segment and seventh overall really helps you to dig deep and see how a candidate maneuvers through delicate matters within product management. The question here is, how do you deal with uncooperative stakeholders? This question will put candidates on the spot, no doubt. However, understanding the product owner's process includes determining how they deal with issues and roadblocks. Many times, product owners have to face uncooperative stakeholders, and that puts hurdles in the discovery phase. While each person has a different way of dealing with these hurdles, product owners always have to be respectful in the end. Therefore, the answer should involve a diplomatic solution where the product owner continually engages with the stakeholders to win their confidence. The product owner should demonstrate the value of agile product development and continue discussions. If all else fails, they should seek help from the sponsors. However, what's most important is that product owners maintain their composure and behave diplomatically at all times. Still in the third section, with interaction with external stakeholders, our eighth interview question is the following. Do you have experience working in a Scrum team? Unlike the third question on Scrum framework, where we were gauging how well a candidate is familiar with Scrum from a theoretical point of view, this question is more focused on diving into the lived experience of a candidate in the Scrum environment. After all, a product owner should be able to distinguish different roles and teams involved in product development. Needless to say, the responses you will get will be varied. Most product owners have experience working in a Scrum product team, but not all of them. However, what recruiters are looking for in a candidate's response when answering is that the prospective product owner has an understanding of how team members work together in a Scrum environment for the betterment of the product project, where the product owner, Scrum Master, and developers work together on sprint measures, product requirements, and user stories. The ninth question in the product owner interview breakdown is another one that might catch candidates off guard. How do you explain your marketplace knowledge to the Scrum team? While the product owner has the marketplace knowledge needed to develop a product vision, the rest of the team doesn't. It's the product owner's job to communicate the appropriate marketplace knowledge to the Scrum team. Consequently, the question is important because how candidates respond determines their ability to translate that knowledge in an understandable format that the rest of the team can later assimilate. Traditionally, marketplace knowledge is communicated through informal interactions. However, planning meetings and having a formal discussion such as stand-ups is also a great way of explaining current market trends to the Scrum team. Our 10th question is the final one in the interaction with external stakeholders segment. How do you go about updating the team on the product and market situation? Where do you source information? Once again, we recommend using another open-ended question since it will give you greater insight into the thought process and management approach that different candidates use on the job. Now, one of a product owner's most important responsibilities to make the team aware of any changing market demands and priorities. Since a product owner develops a vision, it's their job to make sure everyone else understands it too. The answer should be more team-oriented and should exemplify the team's importance. As far as they possibly can, product owners should opt for team sprints and group meetings as opposed to one-on-one encounters with individual members. Furthermore, the answer should include what information you should relay to the teams. That can consist of changing market situations, backlog changes, changing priorities, and new product requirements. We now move on to the fourth segment, product roadmap planning. The questions in this section will give candidates an opportunity to go more in depth on their skills as product owners. The first question in this segment is yet another one that will put candidates on the spot. How would you redesign our product? Now, there's no doubt that different candidates will give different responses. However, candidates should answer this question by first stating that they would have to build a strategic roadmap. Then they would give a brief outline of the steps they would take. In order to do so, they would first have to start by understanding what exactly needs to be improved about the product. That happens through internal and external communication with customers, engineers, customer support team, and other stakeholders. Then once the entire team is on the same page, technical product owners would work with the engineering team to develop unique features that add value to users. That usually happens through processes guided by a product owner or project manager. Of course, not all companies have both a product owner and a technical product owner working side by side. So the answer provided would be tailored to suit your company. Don't be surprised if candidates ask you for more information about the structure of your company, as knowing it would give them a greater insight on how to go about redesigning your product. The next question in this segment is extremely important since it will give you direct insight into how product owners develop product roadmaps. The question is straightforward. Can you tell me about the last time you developed a product roadmap? Needless to say, the answer to this question will vary based on the candidate's exposure and expertise. For example, in smaller organizations, a product owner is likely to be directly involved in the development of the product roadmap. In larger organizations, product owners would only provide their input. In any case, the answer provided by candidates should make mention of how essential it is to follow the cone of uncertainty about scope following each iteration. That is what will demonstrate their understanding of the product owner position and what is required during the development lifecycle. We move on to the next question in this segment. How do you use the product vision when building a product roadmap? This question helps a recruiter to understand if the candidate has a great understanding of the product development cycle, from the product vision right down to the product launch. In answering this question, the candidate should explain the relationship between the product vision and the product roadmap. Usually, they would begin by stating that the product vision includes the purpose, image, and value a product has, and that it explains why the product exists and what purpose it will serve for the customer. Then they would relate it to the product roadmap by saying that it should be based on product vision, since it is a blueprint of how the vision will be achieved. It includes growth tactics, stakeholder alignment tactics, budget development, a timeline, goals, milestones, and deliverables in development. The final question in this segment, and 14th overall, is yet another one of those questions that force candidates to dive into their past experience in product management, namely as it relates to handling stakeholder desires. After all, various stakeholders tend to suggest or desire some changes for the product. The product owner has to satisfy every product stakeholder to ensure product success. The question is as follows. In your last project, how did stakeholder feedback affect your product roadmap? The right answer would be that it encouraged greater coordination and collaboration with the stakeholders while planning the product roadmap. In doing so, the product owner would seek the stakeholders' input and feedback while defining backlog items. After all, this is the key to ensuring that stakeholder wishes are taken care of. We now move on to the fifth segment in this 6-part interview segment. This one is titled User Stories and Product Backlog. Both of them are crucial parts of product and software development. The following questions are meant to give candidates the chance to demonstrate their experience with these aspects of product development. The first question in this segment is as follows. What should a good user story look like? This question is meant to check the candidate's knowledge of a user story structure, as can be expected. The responses you get will be varied. However, the common thread throughout all of them should be that the user story should be a true reflection of exactly how customers will interact with the product. As you know, the product owner is the face of the customer. They're the ones who understand the customer or client best, and as a result, understand how a user story will capture just that. The next question in this segment is the following. How do you go about backlog prioritization? It's no secret that backlog prioritization is essential to make sure the right features make it into the final product, and of course, to avoid technical debt. This question will show whether the candidate is capable of effectively prioritizing changes to existing product features, new features, launches, and bug fixes. Ideally, the best outcome would be if the candidate mentions the Moscow method. However, if someone mentions and explains stack ranking, that would be a good indicator of success too. By now, candidates will be no stranger to questions that put them on the spot. Therefore, the last question in this segment shouldn't surprise them too much. What would you do if you're unable to control the product backlog? This question is important as a product owner has to be in absolute control over the product backlog items. It's their job to make sure that the backlog is healthy and updated. Of course, because of the nature of the question, the answers given will be varied. However, the important thing is that the candidate seems confident when it comes to how they would handle adversities, setbacks, or challenges in their product backlog. As we come to the end of the interview, it's important to get a sense of how well candidates can operate in an agile environment. That's why this segment is called Sprint Planning and Implementation. In an agile team, a sprint is a set period of time during which specific work has to be completed and made ready for review. If candidates know how to effectively plan, organize, and implement a sprint, then the chances are that they will be successful in the job. The first question in this segment, and 18th overall, is the following. Should you release every sprint? Asking this question would tell hiring managers whether the potential product owner understands the difference between sprint planning and release planning. The answer is simple, no. Prospect product owners should know that you don't have to release every sprint. While product deployment is a planning activity and can be based on every sprint, product release is purely business and strategic activity. Development teams will create the products, but any future decisions are business decisions. Those decisions are made along with the product manager. And the last question in this segment in product interview process is quite an interesting one to pose to candidates. How would you explain what is a sprint to someone who doesn't have experience in product development? This interview question allows recruiters to evaluate the candidate's ability to communicate with different audiences. You see, explaining what a sprint is to someone who doesn't have familiarity with agile development is not an easy task. Candidates who don't have much experience leading sprints will likely use a few industry jargon. On the other hand, candidates with strong familiarity with product development will be able to explain a sprint using simple words. Ideally, the answer would highlight key characteristics about sprints, such as the fact that they are short and protected from external changes. We've now come to the final question on our list of product owner interview questions and answers. This last question is fundamental in your hiring process and the process of getting a job, and it will tell you how dedicated the product owner will be to each sprint or how dedicated you are to each sprint. The question is as follows. What do you think can justify canceling a sprint? The right answer would be that a cancellation only occurs when there's a drastic change in priorities. For example, if some critical requirements with high priority are suddenly marked as a low priority, there would be no point in continuing further. Most importantly, the product owner can only make a call to cancel a sprint. They do not have absolute power to do so. A product owner's job is complicated and requires a lot of knowledge and expertise. As a consequence, finding the right candidate to perform the job is not easy, to say the least. Hiring a great product owner is essential, as they are masterminds of successful products. For product owners, it's important to have the right expertise and knowledge when you're applying for the job. The product owner interview questions listed above are common questions asked by recruiters. If you need to put together effective interview questions, feel free to use these questions as inspiration. If you're on the other side of the table looking to land a product owner job, then make sure you are able to answer these questions with confidence. And there we have it. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like the video and subscribe to our channel for more high quality content about product management and product ownership. And I'll see you on some of our following videos. And again, my name is Josh, and I'm one of the co-founders here at Product Manager HQ. And I'm excited for you to take this information and get the product owner job that you want. Cheers.